Welcome to Cardone Debates. It's a new year, 2026, and it's Tuesday, January 6th. We're going to be talking about when is the dollar dying? Is that happening this year? What's going on with Venezuela?
I'm taking over. That's what's happening.
Hey, Dustin.
So,
Is that you?
I hear Venezuela's looking for a new dictator, and I just want Marco Rubio and the president to know, you've got my number. Give me a call. I'm ready. Look at this outfit. How could I not be ready?
Gary, what do you have to say about that? Oh, he's speechless.
The government has silenced
the opening sound, boom, boom, boom. I'm kind of digging it. Yeah, I didn't know that we were going to have a drug dealer and a what is it? Weapons and human trafficker on our show. This is a new one for me. You want to give his background to us, Dana, or because this is about currencies, right? The death of currencies. Is this one of the reasons that currencies die? Where's his gold chains too? He can't possibly be a real guy.
I got
no gold chains, no Bitcoin hanging around his glasses, no laser eyes. I mean,
do you not see the pit viper on these? MOG, bro. Like
did it say MAGA?
Wait, do you know what
MAGA glasses?
Do you know what MOG means, Gary?
No.
That's right.
Dollar gets a rebrand. Okay, so we're talking about the dollar. I hope before you just invite everybody up to the stage, I know we got a really interesting audience. Happy New Year to everyone. And then also, I know that there's been a lot of heavy debate this year about the entire collapse of the world economy, the entire collapse of civilization, the entire collapse of the Fed. So if you guys, we sent a couple of invites out to people that are well honed in on this space, in addition to the people that are heavy Bitcoin people also. I thought that was a little misrepresented on the stage. So I invited Dark and Simon Dixon. If you guys are around, love to have you. Go to StreamYard. Dana will send you the link. Sorry for my bad luck. I've been suffering for a cold and staying up way too late. Dana, the amount of production. I lied to you earlier when I said I wanted to go outside and do this. If I would have gone outside, you would see so many paintings, and I don't want to show anybody. But I bet I've done 15 paintings in 3 days.
What?
Dude, I'm into it right now. I'm just going 15 paintings. That's 3 a day, okay? That's 3 to 5 or 6 a day. If I were to do 3 paintings a day for the next 360, that's 1,000 paintings, man. You have to get to a point where, oh shit, the guy's getting good at it, okay? I mean, there's no way. I am so convinced just by the crazy shit I'm doing. I'm doing crazy art now. I'm like, wow, I would put that up in a room, dude. I mean, they're huge pieces too. And I was just thinking about it the other day. Anyone that thinks you cannot be successful, I am sorry. I have broken the damn code, dude. I believe I have absolutely broken the code. Does not cost a penny. And it costs about an hour to 2 a day. An hour or 2 a day to change your entire life. Unbelievable. It took me this long to figure it out.
Anyway, what's this code that you broke?
No, dude, watch I Am on Sunday mornings, dude, 10:30. It's the deal, dude. I'm telling you, it is the roadmap to total freedom. And it's not, I didn't come up with it, okay? It's literally, I have hacked the fucking code to freedom. I'm so convinced. And Bitcoin got me there because Bitcoin's the only business that allows me to have 6-7 hours free. Now, what does that mean? 6 to 7 hours for me? That's what my last wife didn't understand. I was like, dude, I don't want to chase business anymore. I want to go have some fun. And so the time, the value, God, if I would have known this hack earlier, I kind of did know it. So I've done pretty well, but this is a super hack, and it's just the Bitcoin component, not getting lost in a bunch of noise. and letting the Bitcoin business free me up. And I have to go through all this weirdness. I get in trouble. I do stupid things because I have so much free time. The thing is, hey, how do I now utilize my time? And I mean, can anyone disagree that if I do 3 paintings a day for the next year, there is no way that you're at least going to be able to say, shit, guy's got a lot of material. And what are we short of on this planet? Raw, real material. It's the shortage of all things, really. So, get on a podcast, do something consistently over and over and over and over and over again, write a book. But you got to have the time in your mind and the willingness to go there. Anyway, I'm really excited about it. So thank you.
So congratulations, Gary. Happy New Year. I can't wait to see all of the different paintings, and love the mindset.
Some of them are freaky.
Even though you've been a little ill and under the weather, it's good to hear. I'm curious though, has what's happened in Venezuela changed this current debate and conversation since we said it? Because I'm going to take a unique position here. I think Trump has dramatically shifted the future of the dollar in the short term with what happened in Venezuela. So, let's
get into it. I don't want to set the stage here, but I do think Venezuela should come into this conversation because the chessboard most certainly has changed slightly, if not a lot.
I think it's going to be dramatic, and I won't make the whole I want to bring the other guests on, but I would love to talk about it because I think this is all around the petrodollar. I think that the entire move is more about the pushback against BRICS and the holding of the dollar as the world reserve currency. I think the move in Venezuela is more about that than the oil or socialism or any of the other bullshit they're trying to sell us that it's about. So I think it's going to play out extremely well for America.
Yeah, well, we'll have that conversation. I probably disagree with you on the oil part, and I have a little bit of background in that. So that'll make an interesting discussion. Hey, just one thing, though, before we do this. Dana, you have the setup right now. Can you stick this on portrait instead of or landscape? Yeah, that's better. And then let's roll, guys. I'm so excited about some of the guests here. We've really upped our game here. Not to say that the people from the last years weren't.
They were terrible. Let's just call it like it is. You guys were terrible.
Except for you, Dustin. Everybody else was terrible.
We brought some ringers in. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Professor Littman, thank you so much for joining us. We've been in contact with your team for a bit, so it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's a treat. It's an honor, really. Awesome.
Tell us what you're studying and what you're going to enlighten us today about this discussion.
I've taught and researched, as boring as you can imagine, accounting in depth for the last 30 years I've been teaching. And since I started public accounting like 1991, the financial statements do not report economic reality. The earnings number is a joke. The numbers that the SEC requires companies in the United States to produce are so far different. I'm talking not just like negative versus positive. It's not like it's plus or minus 10%. Companies reporting negative returns when they should be positive, and vice versa. And that the international accounting standards try to fix it, and they made it worse. So when you start looking at Chinese accounting standards or Japan or globally, you end up with even worse accounting than it is now.
And you'll be getting into Bitcoin and crypto soon. Is that right?
Well, so when you start adding up all companies in China versus all companies in Japan, all companies in the US, you start looking at the profitability and what that means for the macro of a country and what that means for its currency and what that means for things like Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. That's where it gets in. But our specialist is saying we understand that equity and credit. Bond's the same thing. So if you're looking at a bond and the underlying accounting of the bond is based on the SEC required numbers, which are totally wrong, but the SEC requires it. So I'm not blaming the companies. We're not blaming management. It's, don't hate the player, hate the game. And the game has been set up with such goofy numbers, and they get worse and worse every year, every time they do pronouncements. So we do that analysis on, 32,000 companies globally. But when you do that in aggregate and you get an idea and you see how profitable is corporate China versus corporate US versus corporate Japan, you can start saying, should I be investing in the renminbi or the yen or the dollar, and it starts to give you an idea about cross currency just because you have such a. I mean, when you look at the S&P 500, you're talking about 98% of the value of the U.S. stock market, 99% maybe even, and so you get an understanding of what the
Probably
entire,
50% of the world stock equity market, right?
more so, yeah. U.S. stock market is now bigger than the
I
rest
think
of
the
the world.
point you're making, like he doesn't really need to move into Bitcoin. Bitcoin will come to him because what he's seeing, Dana, is this is the reason I quit corporate America was when I was presenting to analysts, I knew I was lying. Okay. Like to me, it's very clear what black and white is or green and red for this number. Like liabilities are not assets.
Yeah.
And when I learned that in college, I'm like, I don't think any of you guys have a fucking clue what you're talking about. You can't turn a liability into an asset, Chevron. Add 30 billion. Larry Ellison, you cannot add $600 billion worth of debt and go, hey, bro, I'm worth $1 trillion when you only have $400 billion worth of assets that you've also marked into the future for about 10 years. Okay, that's how these companies are valued. And this is why everyone will get to Bitcoin, because you're like, wow, you're paying like 30 times future earnings plus debt. And I can buy a Bitcoin for 88,000. There's only 16 million of them. I'm good to go. I don't need to know much more. And this, what his point is the system itself, the game destroys currencies. It eviscerates them. It dilutes them. It's the system that puts companies into a position where they have to do quarterly earnings. I mean, how crazy is that? To build a $500 million or $1 billion or $10 billion company, and you have to report every 90 days.
Yeah.
And if you're not scoring a point, you get fucking crushed.
Yeah.
And so everyone ends up saying the same thing, and then the smart guys start massaging the numbers, massaging the nomenclature, the acronyms, EBITDA after COVID, EBITDA before COVID, right?
Oh, EBITDA
they make shit up, man.
It is one of the stupidest metrics the bankers ever brought, and every company thinks they have to report it. And I'll tell you, EBITDA is made for when people say, why do 80% of acquisitions destroy value to the company making the acquisition? It's often because they're using EBITDA as the calculation for why they should be buying or not that company. And EBITDA always makes companies look better than they are, better than reality.
Good to
Buffett's
have you, man.
been saying that. Munger's been saying that, but people ignore the greats. And they just say, oh, yeah, but we'll still use EBITDA anyway.
So your website where people can find you is VALENS-research.com, right?
I'd say Altimetry. Altimetry.com is the more public-facing brand that we have. Altimetry. Like the measure of the height of things and whether they're going up or down. Altimetry.
Okay, so you guys will want to check that out. And then you're also on X, but not super active on there, mostly on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn, and we have a YouTube Altimetry show on the Altimetry Authority on YouTube that people seem to like, and we post 2 or 3 times a week there. Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys will want to check that out. And we also have Lynette. Thank you for joining us today. Tell us about you and what you think is going to maybe happen with the dollar. Just generic overview.
Well, a generic overview, I've actually been in these markets on some level since about 1964, and specifically as a banker and as a stockbroker at Shearson in the 80s, I happened to stumble across non-dollar denominated bonds, and that started my studies in currencies and specifically currency life cycles. So that is my focus because there are repeatable patterns that you see. And so when you ask me about the dollar, I mean, I've been studying this on some level my entire life, and they might keep the name, but everything else changes. And what we're dealing with, without one little doubt in my mind, is the life cycle of a currency, and not just the dollar, but I'm going to say of all fiat currencies, the debt-based currencies. I mean, there's over 4,800 of them that do not exist anymore, because if a government says this is money, and they put a stated number on it. They can also say this is not money, but it's all based on confidence. So I am a huge sound money proponent. I've been watching Bitcoin since about 2010 when it was about $7 a coin. I have very strong opinions on it based upon my study of history and how they transition us from one system into the next system. And it's been quite interesting watching it. I mean, I lived through it in the 60s and the 70s, but actually watching it unfold from the very beginning has been extraordinarily interesting for me.
Yeah, this would be great to have you, Lynette, because I don't think, people talk about dollars and they talk about euros, but they don't go back in 700 currencies, like since 1700, and the life cycle. Like people forget, hey, there's a life cycle to everything, to me, to you, to industries, to the source of energy, how commodities are used, inventions like the wheel and the fire. And soon technology is going to, I think, turn this entire planet on its head, leading us to a world of hyper deflation. Like, I don't think we've ever seen the US dollar actually, if we did the right thing, we could literally grab the next 1,000 years with our dollar if we didn't go around just killing everyone. Like I really believe you have an ability to do something that's never been done before, which is allow ExxonMobil to expand their margin while revenues fall, which will terrify everyone. Oil price will fall. The consumer will be ecstatic. And then that will drive technology to great invention because the whole fracking of energy, and I think energy is about everything. To Dustin's point, I'll probably disagree with where he's going with it, but like he who is long energy with the most abundance, almost irrespective of price, wins the game, right? It's just proximity to energy. I mean, the ability to build things fast. I see a world where ExxonMobil could probably triple their margins with robotics, and they most certainly will stick robotics all over their entire business. Okay, that is a perfect example, right? So $30 oil now makes them 10, and how good would that be for the world? Also, all the fracking that we ever discovered, the real technology and energy, came at $30 crude oil. It did not come at 100. Mm-hmm. It came when people said, no, you can't do this. Well, drillers drill, and then they had to figure out how to drill better than they were doing before. And I think that's the world we're headed in. I would love to hear this idea about we're going to hyperinflate with technology hitting it. We've never had the currency ever have that ability. I'm saying that you're going to be threading a needle, right? I think our politics won't let us get there, but most certainly this would be the opportunity to show that you could extend the life through technology of a currency.
Well, okay. So what they really do is they keep the name the same when they change absolutely everything about the currency. It's genius. It's evil genius. They know how to do it. They've got to get adoption. But let me show you something really simple. And then I want to address the energy issue, if that's okay, because it's quite interesting, really.
Before you go there, we just had another person pop in. Let's just get everybody on stage interview, pulled up so we don't. Okay. And then I think this discussion might have some breadth to it. So if you guys got to run, let us know and make your points early on. But I think there might be some real back and forth here, which I'm cool with.
Tommy, thanks for joining.
It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah.
Can you give us a background on you and why it's relevant to this discussion? And you can tell us generally your overall thesis as well about the dollar.
Sure. I'm in a transition spot in my life career-wise. If we're launching a fund in the next month or two where we're going to be investing in different things, especially natural resources, of which has been a big part of my life. where I was very involved with the acquisition of the fourth largest silver mine in the world, of which we own outright now, and I've been very involved with mining overall over the last years or so. The part of the dollar trade that you're referring to, the bearish view, it's actually fairly simple. It can boil down into a few different macro imbalances that I think have are yet to come to fruition. One is the fact, the U.S. debt relative to GDP is certainly something a lot of people have used as a way to have a bearish view on the dollar. But to me, it comes down to how much, studying prior empires and different world leaders that we've had in the past. What we learned is that it really becomes an issue when it's not necessarily the debt level, but really the interest payment relative to GDP reaches a stage of about 4 to 6% of the economy. When you're trying to grow your economy at a 4 to 6% range just to pay down the debt, is when you start seeing this restructuring of that and become more pronounced in terms of a policy. And so one study I did was to look at the interest payment to GDP in the US versus other countries. And what you find is that the US is by far the largest, although it has, in some cases like Japan, where it pays, it does have a larger debt imbalance relative to GDP than the US. It has a much lower interest payment to GDP, of course, because of where rates are in Japan, and they have been for a long time, which we're at a stage here that the relative change of US rates versus other places in the world is likely to shift in a big way. And I view that in the next 5 years or so, we're going to see a big transition of that, cause the dollar to lose momentum. As we see this is going to, in my 2 cents, unleash a few opportunities. Emerging markets would be one of them, of which usually when you have a combination of a suppressed interest rate environment with a lower or weaker dollar versus other fiat currencies, forget about hard assets for a second, of which is a very important part too, you tend to see emerging markets do quite well. So I think that we're at the very beginning of a secular bull market for the emerging markets. And I should say that will also potentially happen alongside natural resources continuing to do very well. So that's really the sort of the gist of where I stand when it comes to the macro views of the dollar and the opportunities ahead. I love energy. I think energy can have a very significant resurgence in 2026. I think that's a place of the market that is lost a lot of momentum over the years, and it's still historically undervalued, and potentially could be a good place to be an investor for the next few years. We're looking for deals on that side as well. Copper is, to me, what's been happening with copper today, and the potential for a major breakout in a price discovery phase that I think we have officially, entered, could be very critical. And there's going to be other opportunities in commodities like zinc that not a lot of people have focused on, that I tend to have a big focus myself into looking for assets on that side. So without saying much more, that's basically, the 2 cents of my macro views boiled down into a few minutes.
Thank you. So we might have a couple more join later, but for now, I think Dustin has a really good point as well about Venezuela recently. How do you think that this is going to change our view of the dollar and other hard assets?
Well, we really do have an incredible panel. Thank you guys for joining us. So,
hey, Dustin, before we do Venezuela, Lynette, can you give us a 3-minute history lesson on currencies? I just want to make sure that if you don't, I will. I just want to make sure that people understand, because getting the foundation, there is more than the US dollar around. There's been 700 currencies. Okay. All of them share one thing in common.
Right.
Okay? They have all been devalued. They all devalue. Okay, this is the one consistent thing. They haven't all died. The UK pound sterling is 326 years old. We are 284. The average lifespan is less than 40 years. Okay, like I look at that as a trader and go, whoa, man, I didn't know that. It's 234 years and the average lifespan is 40. We're kind of like on the edge here. The UK pound sterling most certainly is. Funny enough, the euro's only since 25 years old, and you're seeing it collapse. So
Right.
I just want people to have a history lesson, Lynette, on currencies always get devalued. It's called fiat for a reason. It's common about fiat. This word is used. It's not. In fact, maybe we explain fiat to the audience. This is really used not to be right or wrong, but to help educate the audience.
Yeah, it's always about education, because my very favorite question is, how many times can you be lied to and you do not know the truth? So fiat, the literal translation, is by decree. And it is a currency that is decreed, legalized, and in existence. And while we may have had the name, the dollar, around for hundreds of years, in reality, what supports it, what gives it its value, has changed within that time frame. And so, when you're looking at any of these, these are paper currencies. We'll go into digital currencies. But what I like is what's called sound money. This is physical gold and physical silver that governments and central banks cannot inflate away or devalue. And it's really simple. It's because these are used, both physical gold and silver is used in every single sector of the global economy. It's not rocket science. It has the broadest base of use and the broadest base of demand. And that actually puts gold and silver, physical form, above governments and above central banks. And so they know one of the transitions takes us back to 1913, when they legalized the Federal Reserve and started to destroy the Constitution. But first there was this, 1 ounce of gold, it has a stated face value of $20. And then they came up with this, because how inconvenient is it to hold a whole bunch of these in your pocket? So much easier to hold this. This is a gold certificate. You see, it's got a little bit of gold here. You could walk into any bank with this and walk out with this. So gosh, and they both have a stated value of $20. So they must be pretty much the same. But at the same time, they bring you this. This is a Federal Reserve note. A Federal Reserve, or any central bank, is a private corporation. A note is a debt instrument. So for 20 years, and you can see how similar these two things look. For 20 years, all three of them was operating at the same time at the same stated $20 face value. So when these two things went away, nobody realized that anything has changed. After all, they had that for 20 years, when in reality, everything had changed, because here you're working for commodity money, somebody else's labor, and it's a change of labor to labor. And oh, by the way, it takes energy to pull this out of the ground. Here, you're working for corporate debt. People don't realize that, but when you stop to think about it, you have to agree to it. If you don't realize it, you don't. Here's the thing with the energy. Because again, I said, I've been watching Bitcoin since it was $7 a coin. This is a physical representation of a Bitcoin. How much like this $20 gold coin does this look? Right? They're trying to get you to think that this is digital gold, but this uses up energy. That's it. And it's used in one place. This stores the energy because gold is indestructible, which means that the energy and labor that it took to pull this out of the ground to begin with can be used over and over and over and over and over again, an indefinite and infinite number of times. This gets used up. What value does it have? I believe, and there's, look, I could be wrong about this. This is my opinion, but I am like, I'll go 99.8% certain that we are living inside of we're living inside of a currency life cycle reset. But even more than that, things have started to change. And as of last January, so about a year ago, instead of Wall Street's create as much gold and silver that does not nor ever will exist, and having those contracts control the price, the spot price, the futures price, I think that we're now moving into a world where it's actually fully supply and demand. And if I'm right about that, then it'll be the physical markets like we're seeing over in the Shanghai Exchange, where they're paying an $8 or $10 premium above Wall Street's prices because the demand for silver has basically exploded. So I just wanted you to see the transition, though, because
I think this is really helpful, and we can debate. I mean, you and I could have an hour and a half debate, just you and I, on this. Your concept there. The other side of that is the gold bugs, silver bugs have been saying this for a long time. We're going to have this. And by the way, I am a commodities guy, right? I'm an oil, nat gas, power guy, which is like, it'll teach you more. Electricity will teach you more about demand for physical than any other commodity on planet Earth. And as Lynette does this, I've only seen 3 times in history in 40 years where electricity did what we thought it would do. Okay, because these markets are always stopped and capped. People forget that. There is a circuit breaker in every market, including Bitcoiners. It's called Coinbase and the banks. But Lynette, the gold market, because you didn't speak much to Bitcoin, I just want to level set everybody, because I think Bitcoin is the more expensive silver and gold gets, the more difficult it gets to move these products. This is a really weird problem, right? Gold doubles in price. I've owned both, and I own both right now. I don't own them in the size I used to own them. But as gold becomes more heavy, meaning that in the case of silver, now you're going to say, hey, as the price goes up, I need less silver. We'll see. We'll see. But at a price, something that Bitcoin cannot do. If Bitcoin were to explode by double or triple like gold has done in such a short period of time, or silver, there is no way to expedite new production. And I am quite certain that gold and silver, we are in a stage where I would bet in my lifetime we will have alchemy of gold through technology.
They've been working on it, but
They've been working on it for 1,000 years. We now have technology. Like, we are making phone calls. Look at what we're doing right now.
So
Gary, I think that like at a price, they will mine. They will take the shit out of their socks. They'll take it out of their teeth, and they'll sell it in the market at a price. And that's something that a code cannot do, at least the Bitcoin code. Now, that I like. And I'm just trying to throw the comparison in there. Also, I do not believe that people are going to go back and listen to 8-track tapes.
So Gary,
hold on, Dustin. I just use this. All of us, at least Lynette and Joel and I, have used the 8-track tape. We ain't going back to 8-track tapes.
No, but I will point out the fact that albums have become popular again.
Yes, they have, but it will not do 8 billion people. See, that's never, I buy them for my daughter, and I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I'm doing. I mean, come on. I have more music on my phone than she could ever possibly have on a record. That's all I'm saying.
I think Professor Littman laid this out beautifully. I think the dollar conversation leads us down many side roads, but I'd like to bring it back to the dollar for just a few minutes, right? Before we go to the alternatives, which is like kind of where we're steering to. And I'm going to play off what Dr. Littman's or Professor Littman's opening statement was, right? So what actually backs the US dollar? And I think our friend Simon Dixon has been extremely illuminating for me to listen to over the years about where the real value and power of the dollar comes from and what's behind it. But I think in order for us to even have this conversation in a way that's legitimate, it's the same thing about accounting practices, which is we are so inundated with fake numbers. And like can anybody tell me how many dollars are in circulation? Like the actual number of dollars that are in circulation physically and digitally. I bet we don't even know what there is no way to know what the whole number is. It's an insane practice. But what is behind the dollar? We call it the petrodollar, but I'm no longer convinced that it is a petrodollar. So Lynette, I thought when you explained that even though it's been called a dollar, at one point it was on a gold standard, and then it was kind of in a mix where it was partially gold standard and not really. Then we confiscated all the gold, and then Nixon threw it out completely, and now it's just completely printed and fake again all the way across the board, like lunacy. Where does the dollar, because if we're going to answer the question, is the dollar going to die, which is the topic that we're going with, I think first we need to establish what actually is the power and the value behind the dollar. And then I think we can make an assessment. Like, I'd love to hear everybody's assessment about what actually is backing it, because then I think we can make a more intelligent discussion about whether or not it's going to continue.
Do you want me to go?
I'd love to get Professor Littman's take on it.
Okay.
Yeah. So the issue is when countries don't pay for their debt service with GDP, they pay with taxes. And the irresponsibility of U.S. Congress, gross irresponsibility, and the deficits they've created have been bailed out by the strength of the U.S. taxpayer year after year after year. So the issue is that the reason why the dollar hasn't collapsed as much as people thought it would, and probably won't over the next, 10 to 20 years anyway, won't collapse as much. That's the point I'm saying. So I'm not saying the dollar is a good place to invest your money. Nobody would ever leave their money sitting in dollars in any form, digital or otherwise.
Women do it all the time, dude.
All right. Well,
women love storing away dollars in banks. It's amazing. 72% of they do. I don't mean to be pointing fingers at women, but like, it's the truth. There's a lot of cash just sitting in banks.
Yeah, I mean, they're not savings accounts; they're losings accounts. I mean, that's what we should teach our kids, right? That they call them losings accounts, because all you do is lose money when it's sitting in a dollar-denominated account. But the fact is, the dollar is still the best of all the worst around the world. I mean, people thought the yen was a safe haven, and all the nonsense been going to Japan. The yen has gone from 110 to 150 in just like 3 years. My goodness, Tokyo is cheap to visit now. It's cheaper than New York because of this move in the yen. And the renminbi, who would ever put their faith into the Chinese renminbi? One of the reasons gold is so strong in China and why people are paying that premium that Lynette talked about is because who on their right mind would ever rely on the renminbi? And so the dollar, is dying a slow death, but it's much slower than every other currency. And in fact, it's gaining strength currency relative, because since the pandemic, right, twice as much of global trade is now settling in dollars. The SWIFT system is proving to be, what every bank says, if I'm not on the SWIFT system, which is a dollar-denominated system, I can't really do international banking at all. And so the U.S. has flexed its muscles there. I'm just going to I know, Dustin, you keep wanting to talk about Venezuela, so let me throw it in. To the extent that Venezuela used to be 3 to 4 million barrels a day of oil pre-Chavez, and then the mismanagement of that oil and mismanagement of that country over the last many years has brought it down to not even 1 million. Some would say it's even just 600,000, 800,000 barrels a day. If suddenly you put in 3 million barrels, not suddenly, but over the next couple of years, you're able to put 3 million barrels a day back onto the market, I think you're right. The dollar is, it's going to be a dollar-denominated oil, even more so than ever. The Saudis are saying that as well. But on top of that, you're going to have the price of gasoline continue to fall. That is a big effect on inflation and is a big effect on the reason why the dollar, again, I'm not pro-dollar, But dollar versus every other currency in the world, absolutely. And the extent that it's still used for trade, the dollar will die a very, very continually slow death, but the slower than everyone else, which means it remains the best place to transact in, but never to store. Nobody would store money in that kind of currency anyway, right? And into a fiat currency, as Lynette would say. But the dollar is still the best of all the worst by far, by a long shot.
To your point, the thing I want to bring up with Venezuela, I am considerably more bullish on the dollar's survivability short term today than I was before President Trump stole Venezuela's resources. I mean, captured Maduro.
Yes.
Specifically, right? Like the opportunity to bring oil down. If we bring gas back down to $1, that's a 70% reduction in transportation costs to do everything. And until I saw that as an opportunity, I did not see an opportunity for us to lower transaction costs.
Yeah.
But in order for like grocery prices to actually come down. And so to me, I believe
Your signal's not very good, Dustin.
Breaking up a bit.
You need to get proper Wi-Fi, dude. I keep telling you that product that Elon sells doesn't work. What's it called? Starlink. I'm still paying for my Starlink, and it doesn't work.
Well, Dustin regained signal. Danny, we're happy to have you.
Hi, Danny.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Look, all my favorite people in one room. Happy
We're so
New Year
happy
to
you
me.
made it.
Wow, I feel horrible for you. If we're your favorite people, my God, you need to go on a date or something, dude. Love the hair.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's up for 2026? You're going to probably be a big gold, silver player.
Well, let's see. So far, I'm not going to say so good, but
It's been awesome. What are you talking about?
I mean, depends from which perspective, right? As a gold holder, sure. Right?
Go ahead. Say more.
No, I'm not saying anything. Depends on perspective. But
Well, yeah, but you're saying something though. You're saying, "Hey, I'm long gold and I benefit, but this is not good."
Yeah, it's not good for the for many people. I mean, I don't like what's happening around the world. I don't like the tensions. But again, this is nothing new. We shouldn't be surprised. And am I happy for silver holders? Absolutely. It's been a long time coming. Am I, happy if you're owning gold and you've been listening to me all these years? And I have so many people writing me, emailing me saying how, they're so thankful. It's changed their life. And yeah, it's great, but we have to prepare. Doesn't mean it's going to be like this forever. I mean, yeah, right now, if you own gold and you own silver and you own palladium, and yeah, you're doing just fine, right, Joel?
Yeah. It's been Goldilocks for gold and stocks. There's no question, right? But as you know, Danny, I'm still, as I have been for the last several years, still very bullish on U.S. equities. The U.S. stock market, when you clean up the accounting, it is not in a bubble. It is the S&P 500 is not. That's just silly talk. It's not a 40 times multiple. It's more like 20 and change, which is perfectly reasonable. And corporate earnings is growing like mad.
Let's be clear though, Joe. I didn't say the whole market, okay? But the stuff I'm going to buy, is priced very, very over the energy companies. It's like crazy. Like I can't buy 40 to 60x, right?
Yeah, I know. And
those
so
are
the
high
energy,
flyers,
specifically the energy enablers, right? Because the
there is no
bottleneck
AI without energy.
The bottleneck for AI
and
U.S. industrialization, the reindustrialization of the U.S., both of those share a massive increase in why electricity is needed. And the electron is really the most scarce item. It's not chips, it's not programmers, it's electrons. There just isn't enough electricity out there. And there's only two ways to get that electricity in the next 5 to 10 years. It's gas and nuclear. You can't do it with solar. The storage just isn't there. You can't do it with wind. We've already dammed up anything you can dam up in North America for the most part. I'm not saying there's still some efficiencies. And so when you start looking at gas and nuclear,
most of them are so old they need to be rebuilt.
And you look at that,
they're well over their lifespan, these dams. I mean, this is a serious thing.
I think there's a lot of efficiencies in dams, but it won't get us to the increase in power we need. And for that reason, there's so many companies that we love and stocks that we'd pick in the overall market that we think is not expensive. It isn't. I mean, I don't know what measures people are using, but it's antiquated nonsense. But moreover, why do you have to buy the market when you can go into the companies that are going to do really well? And I like the gas and nuclear energy enablers and electricity power in general. But some of the electric companies have gotten a bit expensive in the last year also. Whereas the enablers of electricity, like the construction companies that only build gas and nuclear, and the gas and nuclear turbine companies, because turbine demand globally is double whatever the entire world could possibly produce in the next 5 years. They need double the amount of turbines. So anyone making turbines is going to do very, very, very well over the next 5 years. And those stocks are still really cheap, relatively speaking. So no, I love that. I love that theme, and I love it in the U.S. more than the rest of the world. And I could say that I would love those. I could see those outperforming gold, despite gold still being a wonderful, Danny, and Lynette, a wonderful place to put some of your money.
How's your Build-A-Bear stock, Joel?
Build-A-Bear is up how much? 50%, 60%?
Okay, you wouldn't.
Right.
Do you like you don't like any gold miners right now?
I don't know them the way like Rick Rule and you and others would. So, but the enablers, like, I like Primoris a lot. Primoris is a construction company that you really can't build in the United States an electric facility without going after Primoris, and it's a small company no one's ever heard of.
Like a pre-Halliburton.
Yeah, except with a real specialty on electric, as opposed to Halliburton, which is so big and diversified at this point. Right, that does so much and it's so big. So Primoris, I think, is a really interesting idea for that reason. But Danny, I'm not saying I don't like stuff in gold.
I hear you.
Stocks in the gold, but again, gold itself or a gold enabler, a precious metal enabler, or even rare earths, right, of some nature, given the need for rare earths to build power, right, and to reindustrialize the U.S. and for AI.
So can I go back to the original question, because I'd really like to answer this, and I think that it's really important for people to understand what supports a fiat, a government debt-based currency, because it's actually one of the areas that they're actually being honest in, which is what? The full faith and credit of the government. So in other words, as long as you trust them, you have faith, you will continue to loan them money. But what have we been seeing? We've been seeing central banks having to buy government debt. I knew the Fed was going to do a pivot. They just pivoted, right? So what can take down the dollar? And I do agree that going into Venezuela potentially was a resource grab. They do have the largest in-ground oil of any other country. So it makes a lot of sense. And so therefore, in theory, kind of extrapolating that out, it could elongate the dollar's position as it's not really the world's reserve currency anymore. However, what it requires and what will kill not just the dollar, but frankly, the yuan, the yen, whatever, the euro, take your pick, it doesn't matter, is rapid inflation and the loss of public confidence. Because as I've been watching this trend, particularly since 2008, the whole system is built, it's a con game. So it's all built on layers of confidence. And I've been watching those layers evaporate. The first one was bank-to-bank confidence when they stopped even publishing the interbank lending rate. Banks know they can't necessarily trust each other anymore. One layer gone. And then you go to 2015 with the Swiss surprise, when you have everybody meeting at the IMF, everybody meaning the central bankers and the treasury secretaries of pretty much every country in the world. And what do they say? The Swiss says, oh, we are committed to the peg to the euro. That is our highest, biggest, toppest priority. We're going to keep it, that peg. We're going to do it. And not even 2 days later, after they came out and they were so adamant about maintaining that peg, and bam, they broke that peg. And what that means is that central banks will do what is in their best interest to do, no longer in lockstep, but that's the central bank to central bank confidence gone.
That's right.
Right. And then you go to, what was it? 2022, when you had all of the central banks and the Federal Reserve particularly, but this happened in a number of central banks, coming out and saying, oh, we're just going to raise those rates 50 basis points, 50 basis points, 50 basis points. And they trained the market since 2008 on forward guidance. We're going to tell you what we're going to do ahead of time so you can get into position and benefit. And so they kept promising this, and then bam, they raised the rates 75 basis points. And the market then confidence in that forward guidance. And then, of course, all the central banks came out and said, oh, we're not going to do that anymore. But that's layers of confidence. What do we have left? We have public confidence. That's what creates the hyperinflation. And then also, to your point, the hyperdeflation. They're both the same thing. They're just the flip side of the same coin. And there's only one way to fight deflation, and that's with inflation. And there's only one way to fight inflation, and that's with deflation. So take your pick. But what will be the undoing of these currencies? And we can all just sit back and let these things happen. That is not the nature of who I am personally. I am trying to change the world. I don't know if I can or not, but I know I got to try. The reality is that we keep kissing the lower band, the lower support level of public confidence. When we break through that band, I'm going to say the clock is ticking on how long, and they can keep the name. We can have a digital dollar, but it's going to be completely different than the debt-based dollar, which was completely different than the gold-backed dollar. And the gold, it's also garbage that we had a gold-backed dollar until 1971 when Nixon did that. That shift started because we needed more flexible money. That means money that they could inflate. And that's what the cryptocurrencies are. And I don't care which one, take your pick. We don't know who's really going to survive, but there's got to be a test of these markets. And it really is all based on confidence.
Right. I want to bring up that point because I think this is a story to follow.
Love you, Jenny.
Love you. To Lynette's point of loss of confidence, even amongst central banks, if we look at what Italy's looking to do, why is Italy fighting for its gold, saying it belongs to the people? The government wants control of its gold. They're telling the ECB, and that brings up, and maybe Joel, you know the answer to that, is why do they need the ECB's permission if the gold is with the Bank of Italy?
Because they can't print their own currency. They gave in to the Anglo-Dutch bitches that run the fucking show.
Right.
That no one elected. This is the problem. The UK is just committing hara-kiri. They did not surrender their sterling. The EU is never going to work. The Swiss have never surrendered their currency. And Norway, probably the most fiscally responsible country on planet Earth, and Russia didn't
Well, it
go
raises another point. Should gold be controlled by the government? Because that's what Italy wants to do. Or should you have an independent body, which is the Bank of Italy, the equivalent of the Fed, making decisions of what to do with the gold? Because what happens if the government of Italy would want to sell its gold to pay off its enormous debt? Should they have the right to decide that?
But Danielle, let's be really clear with the audience again. Nobody's paying off any of this debt. It doesn't get repaid when it's over $100 billion trillion. These numbers are not. You might get your fix every month and pay off some of the debt, some of the interest, but there's no going. You're not going to.
Well, it will make it. They own the third largest, the biggest gold. Their third position in the world in terms of gold holdings.
Italy is.
Italy is.
Yeah,
Italy.
who controls that? It's not Italy. It's either the Vatican or the Anglo-Dutch, the IMF and the Bank of England.
It's definitely not the Vatican. The government, Giorgia Meloni's government, is saying we want the gold back. We want it. It's for the people, which
Yeah,
raises
that's my point, though. They clearly don't have it.
they don't. But they need the blessing of the ECB. But I'm like, well,
That's never going to happen.
but I
Because
understand
Great
Italy's
Britain-
point in the sense, like, why should the ECB be in control? It should be the Bank of Italy that controls Italy's gold.
You know, I think this.
you can't go back now. You did the whole EU thing. I mean, England did the Brexit, and people freaked out. I think that was the best vote. That was the first time we actually had humanity come out and vote properly, which is
I think we're on the path. We're fully on the path, in my opinion, on the downward spiral of the European Union.
Oh, Danielle,
I don't know if in
totally
10
agree.
years.
I think
I don't think the
seeing-
European Union will exist in 10 years. That's my
I totally
forecast.
agree. And to Lynette's point, I think that makes the dollar very strong. And it extends its lifespan because you're comparing against a piece of dog doo-doo. They have so many problems. No production of anything, no energy resources, no food, and they have no culture anymore. And people like me are not traveling to England. They'll put me in jail. I'm not going to go spend any money in any of those countries until they clean their shit up. So like I think Europe is failing. The US dollar is not failing. It's the euro fails first. This is I think what we're doing, we're going to end up owning Greenland, Canada, and all of South America, owning it because this makes sense to be centralized around all these resources in the world we're moving into. That extends America's influence on this planet for a long time. Whether the dollar is exactly the same as it was. Look, I got a bunch of dollars here. 70% of them have Steve Mnuchin's name on them. Okay? Steve Mnuchin was the Treasury Secretary for Trump. That's when all this, and more is getting ready to be printed. But that doesn't mean the dollar's going to fail like in the next 5 years. But Europe, wow.
So there are like three things in there. Okay. Number one, I'm so glad you brought that up, Daniela, because I really do think that this is a huge test for gold and gold ownership. But when they put together this, I mean, there is no pegged currencies that have ever survived the pegging, and that's bringing the European Union together. So quite honestly, that was a failed experiment before they even started. But Italy had to pledge.
By the way, Lynette, not to interrupt you, they're doing the same ploy, calling it stable coin. There's nothing fucking stable about a stable coin. It's a linked coin. Just call it a fucking digital peg. They all fail, dude. These pegs fail.
It is. And to the earlier point, this was really why that President Trump legalized the stable coin, is to try and develop another artificial market for dollars. So even going in to a very resource rich country like Venezuela, you know, they have gold, they have oil, they have the rare earths. They've got a tremendous amount of resource. And so kind of what I'm seeing as a potential, and it scares me, I'm not going to lie about it, is that now it's the rule of might versus the rule of law. And all of this is going to be tested, because if we do this in the US, why can't Russia decide that?
Hey, Lynette, we are doing this. This is happening right now. In fact, if you were running the country, I would be doing it. I wouldn't even we're not going to go to war. We're grabbing everything right now. One, it's great for South America. They cannot get their shit together. Okay. It's crazy. They have no prosperity whatsoever. This is where I disagree with my Bitcoin crypto friends, is that centralization is not bad in of itself. It's actually hyper efficient. It's the criminals and the evil that power brings to most egos. And then they end up needing more because they just cannot get enough. That lady in Italy is going to end up she will have a car accident and she will go away. They will not let any country in Italy get their gold back. Any country's not getting their gold back. That's why, because they have them by the balls, Daniela. That's where they want them. And I think Europe's becoming a social prison. Literally, it's going to be a prison. They're going to be, all the defense contractors are going to make so much money building effectively a prison in Europe. And it's so sad. That's sad to watch. And I hope Americans get really angry about it, because the Europeans should never have trusted 4 ladies on a broomstick. Seriously, man. These people, this is the cabal. Okay, this is the Bank of England and the Vatican and who knows what, but you don't run a social experiment like that and let 20 million people come in and not spend $1 on assimilation. See, this is why I know it was evil. You never even talked about the word assimilation. When my family came over to America, like, okay, a bunch of Sicilians and Italians, and we did some naughty things, but what did we do? We grouped up in our little clubs, and then we were proud to be here, and we kind of acted the way you guys acted until we were accepted. That's not happening in Europe. Okay, like literally, I don't know how that's retrievable. And that scares me, because then I could see a destruction of the US dollar, because if I am the 4 witches on broomsticks in Europe running this thing, or at least pretending to, I'm the kind of psychopath that will blow a nuclear weapon just to make everybody else miserable. Like I really think it's that bad, because they are going to be revealed as evil creatures. This kind of transparency is happening. And, we can say this is not right for Trump to do, but as an American, Canada's not properly managing their resources. Dude, I'm not interested in Canada doing deals with Russia or with China if they're the enemy. I don't really think we have as many enemies as we say we do. But I would take over all these resources. Like I wouldn't even think about it. I'd be like, dude, we're going to tariff the fuck out of you, or you're going to run all your shit through us.
Yep.
Why not?
Why not? Because the world is made up of a lot of different people, and it's much better to cooperate than just go in and beat the crap out of people and take what you want. I mean, do you have kids? Would that have been okay with you between?
I have 2 children, but I'm not saying that I don't think you need to commit war on Canada. I think if you ran a vote on Canada and you got these idiots out of the way, they'd go, we want to be American. I do not know a Canadian that doesn't want a blue passport. Because you're not going to survive anyway, dude. There's no chance Canada survives this.
As a Canadian as a Canadian Italian living in the United States, look. I think that Canada's really shot themselves in the foot. I know I'm not saying anything new here, but they were like, all right, you don't want to turn on the XL pipeline, we'll find another way. And the US found another way. So it was a big FU to Canada. Right? Because that was the only carrot we were hanging over the US. We have oil. They need our oil. Guess what? They don't need our oil. They found another way. And it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. Whatever side you're on, it was strategically brilliant.
Daniela, I have bought more energy from Canada than probably anybody that I know. And I would make one phone call and take their entire output. There is no way Canada survives without Americans' ingenuity on this energy complex. You can't go it alone. This is a world that's not going alone. Like when I see America investing 18% in the Westinghouse without putting $1 on the table, that tells me, oh, wow, man, we're going to build nukes, like we're going to rain nukes out. I like that play instead of having Steve Mnuchin's name on a bunch of this shit and giving it to some idiot that's going to spend it on, lottery tickets, right? That's a good use of no capital, actually. It's just ensuring that Westinghouse survives that. Why are we doing that? Every other sovereign invest in their companies. Every one of them. We can't not do that and survive. I don't even see why every other country's taking over land masses where they can. This is a global game. It's been going on forever. You expand or you contract. You don't really have a choice.
At this point, at this point, honestly, it's the U.S. is to lose. The U.S. is now more economically dominant than anyone really understands.
I
The
agree.
U.S. on lower tax rates, which is kind of crazy because I want to go back to the importance of when you say what, and to Lynette's point, what is backing the U.S.? The only thing the U.S. has that they can say backs it is U.S. government-owned assets and U.S. taxation. But the U.S. has succeeded on a lower tax rate to prove that when you have a lower tax rate, businesses will invest more, will spend more. I'm not saying taxes in the U.S. aren't still high, especially in California, Illinois, Massachusetts, New York, or whatever. But in Texas and a lot of the other more friendly, tax-friendly states where people are moving to and building businesses, the U.S. corporate America produces more economic profit than the entire rest of the world combined. Right? China may have very big companies, but they don't make money. And if you don't make money, you can't tax them. And if you can't tax them, the government has no power. So when you look at the U.S. total taxes, because U.S. companies are so incredibly profitable, you can tax those companies on a lower rate. That's Trump 2018 brought the tax rate down. And the U.S. now is collecting in total $5.5 trillion of federal tax revenue, which is more than the next 15 to 20 countries combined. So the U.S.'s ability to spend on the military, have better military technology. And by the way, given that the rest of the world has realized, particularly with Venezuela, that Russian and Chinese military assets don't work, as the U.S. flew into Venezuela. Venezuela had both Russia and China anti-aircraft, anti-missile, anti-whatever, and the U.S. walked through it like it was nothing. The whole world has been seeing that. And so what happens is when the whole world spends on military, where does it get spent? 70 to 80% gets spent on U.S. companies helping countries defend themselves or whatever. Obviously, they were not going to sell this stuff to China and Russia or the unfriendlies of the U.S. So when you start looking at this, you realize the U.S. really has it to lose, not just for the dollar's sake, but for the U.S. hegemony. Pax Americana is stronger now than it's ever been. It's going to be for the next 10 to 20 years. You can see the data supporting it.
Joel, why is there no interest, and perhaps I'm wrong, in using the tax money to lower the debt?
Because why would you? Why would Coca-Cola lower its debt level? Why is Amazon actually increasing its debt level? The more cash flow that you have, the decision to, should we pay down the debt and therefore not use that money for all the other things you could spend on, military and otherwise social services, or just make sure you can keep paying the debt service. And the fact is that $5.5 trillion and a $900 million debt service number, no one doing that kind of analysis would think the U.S. is going to default, which is why the U.S. still has the ability to go to the market and get what the best interest rate they get. And it's been this way. Look, everyone making this comment said this comment 10 years ago, and yet the U.S. in a stronger position right now. People that said this said it 20 years ago, and yet the U.S., because of the tax revenue. Listen, I'm not saying that the U.S. Congress is doing a good job. U.S. Congress is getting bailed out. Their irresponsibility is getting bailed out by the strength of the U.S. economy. And the U.S. economy is built on the backbone of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which is why every entrepreneur would rather be an entrepreneur in the United States than pretty much anywhere else in the world, right? Because without doubt, I mean, it's proven. So as long as that remains the case, the U.S. has cash flow to pay the debt service. And you would say, why ever pay the debt down? Why not just make sure you pay the debt service every year very comfortably, and just maintain that cap structure like every company does. I mean, no company should be debt-free if they have strong cash flows, because it's a better arrangement and it's more value. So let the U.S. I'm not saying the U.S. should go to 50 trillion or something like that. I think it was irresponsible of the last administration to increase the debt by 10 trillion, right? I mean, these are not good things, but that stupidity was bailed out by people not realizing how much the U.S. economy grew versus the rest of the world, and how much U.S. taxation has provided more than enough tax flow to cover U.S. debt service, which is why we don't have default risk and why U.S. is still the only AAA game in town.
However, have you taken a look at the level of debt service? And in 2009, and you can correct me because maybe I'm misunderstanding this completely, but in 2009, when we were running for the first time, that $1 trillion deficit, and I said to myself, well, if we haven't been too bad on the deficit up to this point, why are we at that moment servicing 13 trillion in debt? I love the Federal Reserve Education Department, the Fred, because you can go in and you can look at that back data.
Right.
That's
Yes.
what I did, right?
Yes.
And when I looked at that on a spreadsheet, what I saw is that we aren't paying all the interest on the debt. The excess interest then goes into the principal, and we're
Yes.
actually compounding interest. And if you go into the Fred right now and you pull up on that chart, the interest that we're paying on the debt, it's exponential. It's like this because in 2002, they were forced to raise interest rates. So that means that it takes more and more and more tax dollars to pay that, and that the interest on all of that debt is becoming, well, probably ultimately the largest line item. So you can break it down into like a normal person's level. And I have a credit card and I'm not paying all the interest on the credit card, but I still have room on there. So that interest goes into the principal. I mean, at some point, I can't borrow any more money. And when you see central banks, but that's what third world countries used to do. That was considered a bad thing. But after the great financial crisis in 2008, all of a sudden that became a good thing. It's not a good
yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you on all the expense numbers. The piece is that, let's say you had a credit card and you were not paying off your credit card, but your credit card was at a 4% interest rate, not a 24% interest rate. And you said, I'm going to keep increasing my credit line on that credit card. The reason why you're able to do it and why the credit card company still keeps you giving money is because your income, your monthly income level doubled or more. Meaning the amount that U.S. was collecting in taxes 10 years ago or 12 years ago was probably half of what the U.S. collects now. And that's on lower tax rates. That's Art Laffer. Art Laffer should have won the Nobel Prize, and he never will because it's such a political hot potato. But Laffer said, if you lower taxes from super high rates to lower rates, people will invest and work so much harder, and you'll gather entrepreneurs that will want to work in your country and what have you, which will then produce the cash flow. And so what I'm getting at, Linda, everything you're saying, I totally agree with. The reason I don't see the problem in the next 10 to 20 years yet is because of how much the U.S. tax revenue has increased on a lower tax rate, because every business has said, I'd rather be in the United States doing business than elsewhere. I'd rather make my profits in the U.S. And so the strength of U.S. entrepreneurship, which grows into the biggest, most innovative companies in the world by far, which the U.S. stock market is a measure of that, and U.S. corporate profits, when properly calculated, is a measure of that, is what's bailing it out. Linda, I think that the party could end at some point, but as long as, and what it looks to be, that income tax revenue for the U.S. keeps rising at a level that's faster than the debt service is rising. And that's the difference. It's not the debt service hasn't gone up a lot. It is. But as long as the cash flow available to pay it keeps going up, that's why the U.S. still hasn't had a default risk. It could be in 10 years or 20 years. We do another $10 trillion in the next 3 or 4 years of a deficit. 10 trillion, not in debt, but in deficit, like we did in the last 4 years of administration. Then we're in trouble because no amount of tax revenue is going to cover that. But a deficit of 1.6 trillion, the U.S. collects more than enough tax revenue to cover that kind of a deficit in perpetuity every year.
As long as the confidence remains and people remain, one of my favorite quotes is, when a well-packaged web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses over generations, you know this when I see you smiling, the truth will seem outrageous and the speaker a raving lunatic. I consider myself a raving lunatic, but
you should see how I get trolled on Danny's show when I make comments like this.
Well, really? I don't know.
Yeah, raving lunatic to say the least.
Raving.
They're jealous of his hair. Let's be honest, Joel.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
They're jealous of his good looks.
My ponytail.
Oh, there you go. Man bun. Okay. But the bottom line is, we're hearing so much about unaffordability. The truth is that the system was set up so that no matter how much more money individuals make, it's never going to keep pace with inflation. And so people have to work harder and take on more debt to do it. I go back, it all goes back to the confidence of the public. We lose that, then there is no amount of revenue and you can look at the EBITDA, which I know you hate, but you can look at the revenues before taxes, And every time we hit a recession, boy, do they go up. And that's more of a reflection.
When was the last time we hit a recession?
Money printing, inflation, devaluation. People can only take so much.
The world that you guys imagine is a world where you have inflating prices, right? Cars are going up, houses are going up, tuition's going up. Everything is increasing in price for your world where the dollar just keeps getting further and further destroyed. Is that correct? Is that a fair statement?
But remember, there's only one way to fight inflation, and that's with deflation.
You say that, but it's a little bit like saying, I mean, you can say it all you want, but I'm not sure that actually works because it didn't buy it when you said it the first time. I could see you having, that world is going to lead to this chaos, but we have never been in a space where, and I just use ExxonMobil, it's the best example. Wow, if they could increase, these evil fossil fuel companies could increase their margins, okay, and the price of the energy to the consumer goes down, that's a world I want to live in, man. That's where ExxonMobil is actually going to increase in price. This is what Joel, I think believes. The ExxonMobil becomes more valuable. Consumers are happy. I can do more with the money I have because I'm not being raked constantly by inefficiencies. And that all becomes because of technology. And we've never been there before. We have never been here before where you're going to be, maybe we valued money incorrectly. And maybe we have different, actually, maybe our whole value on what we're doing is wrong.
I mean, Gary, I think that's part of it is that when I'm saying that the U.S. economy and specifically U.S. is bailing out, I don't think the other economies have the ability to bail out. Their responsibility to Congress. Congress is absolutely responsible. They are overspending. They continue to. Thank goodness they talk about not spending too much, but they still have a deficit. What it doesn't pick up is the opportunity for superabundance that we can get in energy and food and a number of our basic expenses that instead of thinking of inflation always being because of monetary policy, that inflation is because of scarcity, supply and demand. And if AI provides in the U.S. an ability to suddenly have so much more gas, oil, stuff, technology, compute power, whatever it is, right? Space. Because
Joel, I can get an MBA today, right? Somebody here has an MBA, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what did that cost you, man?
Oh, $75,000, and that was 25 years ago.
Okay, so you went to a shitty school, but no, just kidding. But look, my kids have no reason to go to Harvard today.
30 years ago,
they can get a Harvard MBA look-alike. I have learned so much in the last 3 years for nothing.
Yes, sir.
$0.
Yeah,
that is exciting, man. Now, if you still decide to send your kids to public school and abuse them, okay, cool. You weren't a good parent, but it has nothing to do with education.
So you can solve a lot of the supply chain issues,
dude. Every person on the planet can get an MBA.
All right,
and I can learn to become a great artist if I want to, without having to go to New York and put my resume in and suck their, to get in their program. I don't have to go to Columbia. I can sit there and watch YouTubes all day long, man. Read books. I mean, it's unbelievable what we're able to do if we stop whining, right? Because the whining is because we've never had other choices. That's why I'm saying, wow, I can get an MBA. I can get a $250,000 MBA in 6 months. I save 3 years. I don't learn how to smoke dope at the frat club. I actually learned something. Now that's cool, man. My lifetime value, because I'm doing this at 18, not waiting to 26, my lifetime value increases exponentially.
Yes, sir.
Right? I mean, wow.
Yeah.
If I could have 4 years back of my life and have learned some of the stuff it took me 20 years to learn, whoa, that's big.
But wait. Let me ask Joel this question because he hires a lot. Joel, if you are choosing a new hire, let's say MBA from Yale, versus online MBA from XYZ college, who are you choosing? Does the brand power still matter today?
The one that can build me an AI agent and whatever they're doing.
So you don't care. You don't care where it came from?
No, I need people that are comfortable with AI the way the kids used to be so comfortable with the internet when the adults weren't.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, good.
hands down.
Yeah.
I don't because my people are.
Hey, let me ask this question on that though. This is a great question, Daniela, because I think it's part of inflation. You get a Ukrainian resume, and
Yeah.
you get a American resume.
Yeah.
Okay. Which one do you take, Joel?
The AI enabled person, as long as I can trust them, right? If they have integrity and I can trust them, and they've got AI skills, that's the person.
See, I immediately go to the Ukrainian because I think they're less spoiled.
Interesting.
Most certainly not Canadian. I mean, 32 days of holiday a week, a month. And these Ukrainians,
Nah,
they're not taking
man.
32
No
days. They're
way.
like, dude, how can I hustle some more? That's the guy.
Gary,
you want to hire.
90% of our people are overseas, right? We've got key people in the U.S. and the rest of our teams are in other locations of the world.
See, to me, that's more frightening about America than the currency. I don't think we have a currency problem. We have weapons, so many weapons. We can do so much shit. That's the way we keep. That's the only way fiat currency is kept up forever and ever. Of all the countries that ever did it over 100 years, it's because their navy and their weapons were bigger and badder than everyone else's. Let's be honest.
Well, that's the U.S. right now and for the foreseeable future.
That, and they have the ability to morph from one system to the next system without the public realizing what's happening so that they can keep that consistency. I mean, you can't.
What's dumb as a bag of rocks, Lynette. Let's be honest, okay? We've dumbed them down so bad they took $1,200 and a shot.
Oh,
There's no doubt about it.
I mean, seriously.
Earlier point, where you can sit on and watch YouTube and get an education and learn things. I mean, that's really what I try and do is I try and just get people to look at things a little differently. Because I personally found that when I do that, even I'll look at the same chart 1,000 times, but that 1,001 time I'm looking at it from this view instead of this view, and I see things that I did not see before. And it is time for the public to wake up, and that's a tall order. I mean, I frequently do feel like Don Quixote and jousting with the windmills. And I get how crazy it sounds. And I'm not even going to say that it doesn't at times sound insane to me. But what I do know.
Well, I see your mushroom lamp in the back, so you probably are a little off.
Look, I was sorely abused, right?
Oh, I'm sure you were.
But, but I do think that this is the best opportunity that I've ever seen in my lifetime and studying currencies and life cycles and opportunities. I think this is absolutely the best opportunity I've ever seen for the public to actually wake up and take their power back. I don't know whether or not they're going to do it, but I'm going to die trying, that's for sure.
Tavi, what do you think about this? Have you hired anyone recently? Who would you be hiring?
I'll give you some thoughts about this. And one thing to think a lot about is America has succeeded so much with probably the best pool of labor expertise in the world. I was attracted to live in America, because of that specifically, and wanted to be part of it. And I think everyone outside of America has a similar view that this is a platform to create wealth if you're a hardworking person. One thing to add about AI is it is one of the biggest enablers of your abilities that I've ever seen. I agree with a lot of the comments, and I would say that this has been one of the most, if you're an entrepreneurial and want to start a business, I remember, I guess, with the internet where before the internet, you had to start a physical location, purchase an office or rent an office and start your business. The internet kind of removed that barrier. What I think AI adds on top of that is you've got your best assistant, your best employee in any front that you would like to help you build your business. It's one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. I am certainly a lot more efficient and smarter than I was 3 years ago before ChatGPT and other tools. So with that in mind, one thing that comes to from a macro standpoint that I think a lot about is how in the world can we have these types of differences in valuations of companies in the US versus other parts of the world that have not, when we see this enabling process, improve the quality of labor in places like emerging markets, in places like Europe. I suspect that difference between quality of labor will be at least smaller than it was, than it is today, at least. And as we see that, I wonder if there's going to be a shift. And now, if you look at an average business in the US and average business anywhere else in the world, the valuations are a major contrast. And I just wonder if that's going to change, or it's going to force a rotation into other places. I happen to have unfortunately, I got to go here in 3 minutes, so I'll just say this because I think it's relevant to this discussions that you guys are talking about. I happen to have a different opinion in a few of the things that were said in regards to the US, in regards to, I think of the world maybe slightly different than most of you, I guess, in a sense. I try to start from an imbalanced standpoint. When I look at the world with the US lenses, I think the US has two major issues, and every country has their own major issues as well. But thinking about the US, two big problems to face and to think about in the next 10 years. And I call it the twin deficit. I don't call that. There's somebody else called it, but it's a twin deficit issue. It's coming from not just the fiscal problem, but also the trade balance problem. Structurally, that's very concerning when you have that. It's not the end of the world. Doesn't mean we're going to, hit a wall and have issues, but you have to deal with that in a way where you got to reduce fiscal spending somehow, which has been a huge aspect of the engine of growth in the US. And the second aspect of this is, how do you think about the dollar? How do you change the trade balance issue, which oftentimes is not discussed with the same degree that the fiscal problem is discussed? And when you add those two things, it's hard to believe we're going to see a world where you raise interest rates substantially in the US, or you see a strong dollar. So I'm of a very different view that the dollar is likely to get stronger. And I'm talking about not versus gold and versus silver. I think those or other hard assets. I'm specifically talking about other fiat currencies. I'm actually, from a currency trading standpoint, I'm not bearish at all on the euro. I'm actually fairly, very bullish on the euro. I think we saw a breakout back in April. It doesn't mean euro is going to be the next reserve currency. Nope, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying from a trading standpoint, 3 to 5 years from now, or 3 years from now, I would think that the DXY index, to be very specific, because we can throw all these names and things. I'm going to be very specific. I think the DXY index, which is a measure of the dollar versus a pair of currencies, the euro, Japanese yen, British pound, and others. I think that's going to break a major trend on the downside this year. And as we see that, I think it will create momentum. People will tune into that idea that the dollar has entered a secular decline. I don't think it will collapse. I just want to be very clear. I don't think it will collapse. I just think that it will be a slow, gradual decline, and that will cause a few changes in the macro landscape of emerging markets doing better. I would bet that
you're basically saying, to be clear, that the U.S. dollar does relative to the euro, the yen, the
Yeah.
Russian, whatever, the Canadian, it does less. It suffers relative to those other currencies. Is that
Yeah,
for the most part?
particularly.
Explain to me, why would the euro have any strength? I just don't know why. What does the euro have that would bring value and confidence, since we all have agreed that it's really about confidence in these currencies?
Yeah.
What
That's a good
confidence
question.
is Europe and NATO bringing me that
I think
they're not psychopathic?
twist the question. What does the U.S. bring? And I don't think the U.S. doesn't bring anything to the table. I would twist the question.
Well, okay. If you want to twist it, we bring energy, military might, massive infrastructure. One
not
decision
in that
maker.
sense. Not in that sense. Twist the question in the sense of if you are in the position of a policymaker in the U.S. and you're facing the issue that they're facing, and
Well-
the biggest growth engine, if we can agree here, one of the biggest growth engines of the U.S. versus other places in the world has been fiscal spending, right? In the last 10 years, 15 years, the U.S. has spent more money than anybody else in the world, by far, by far.
Is it government or is it just as a country?
As a government, fiscal spending,
Okay.
right? So, and this is, you can do it at average, median, aggregate. By far, we've spent more than Europe. And for the right reasons. I mean, we are the reserve currency and we have the capability of doing that. So I just question that continuation of that spending moving forward. I think we're going to hit a wall here at some point.
But you're saying in pretty short order, man. You're saying a year or two.
Well, I think it's going to get processed. But here's what I think is
It's interesting. See, I like these debates because we have one guy saying the euro is going to, probably do really well in 2 years. And we have a couple other panelists going, man, I don't think the euro survives 5 years.
Yeah.
I just love being a contrarian, but when there's reasons
I like
to
being
be a
right,
contrarian,
man.
reasons to be a contrarian, I think there's very, very strong reasons to take the other side of this. And that's not to say that we're going to see the euro become the reserve currency. I don't want to say that at all. But it's to say that the DXY index, and being very specific in my view here, that the DXY index will likely break a very important trend that has been on the upside. And that's going to be what unleashes a lot of different things in the market.
Well, Tavi, the dollar has gotten so strong of the 5 years leading into this year that it could use a breather for the sake of the world and for import-export economies. Because a breather. Second, in May of this year, Trump replaces Powell, and we know he's going to replace him with someone who's going to be very low interest rate, and maybe even do other things with the Fed that we end up with really low interest rates, and we start going back to 2%. If the U.S. is at a 2% interest rate, the money creation from lending is going to be enormous, and that alone is a reason to say, meaning why I'd agree with you, that if the EU is still stuck in the mire that they're in other countries, and they still have these, I'll say, higher interest rates than they should have for their own people's benefit, but they seem to want to have this stronger currency, then yeah, I could see the DXY. Meaning, I think that perfectly supports why the dollar would give up some of the massive strength that's gained over the last 5 years, and that's probably good for U.S. exporters also.
But that's where that's the question, Tavi. If you could help me, how is the euro able to maintain that strong currency given the market is in the toilet?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the lenses from Europe, it's very difficult to view this as a trade. When you look at the lenses from the U.S., it's actually very clear. Look, one of the things that has a major impact.
You're talking about shorting Donald J. Trump. I wouldn't do that.
No, I'm not shorting him at all. This is the opposite. I think
politician or no politician. He's the greatest capitalist I've ever known.
Wait a second. Hold on a second. You're changing the narrative here. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, I think Trump is a weak dollar guy. Okay, I'm not saying that. I
think he's a low tax guy because we've not really taken into account what would happen to the U.S. dollar if the way we do taxes today changes, and I'm not convinced we're not going to see that. We go to a consumption tax, drop capital gains, drop income, because I'm not paying my capital gains anyway. I refuse to pay them on a religious moral exemption. Now that we all know we're killing, Laugh if you want. We're killing my dollars, Lynette's dollars, everybody that pays taxes. You're killing people now. This is beyond, like, I could stick my head in the sand, maybe in Vietnam, but like that was 40 years ago. We have not stopped. I'm a grown man now. We are killing people, and I need to stand up and go, no, I'm not doing this shit anymore. Fuck you guys.
Yeah, it's
I mean, seriously, fuck you.
Gary
because-
Trump.
Just mention, I think we are conditioned to think of, most times we're conditioned to have a view because of things that happened in the last 5 to 10 years. This massive leadership of US equities, and that has caused indices and weights of US equities relative to the rest of the world to reach a place that I think is just unsustainable personally. And when you look at through the course of decades, not one decade, I'm talking 50, 60, 70 years, what you tend to see is, let's pick a place, Latin America, for instance, which has seen a major shift politically and also economically. There are decades where Latin America leads the market for 10 years. I think we're heading to a world like that personally. I think it's more likely. And I would emphasize that even more.
Yeah, look, there's a big joke on the internet. Go buy property in Venezuela right now. It's probably not a bad trade, man.
Well,
I mean, because that place is going to get safer. See, that's why I get back to the dollar, because the UK, there is nothing about the UK sending any of their resources to any country to think that they're going to do anything but rape and pillage. And the regulatory tax in Europe is what's killing it. There are no innovators there. There are no good businesses. BMW, Audi, Porsche, Volkswagen are going to absolutely fail. Like, in bye-bye, see you later. Like, they have no energy, dude. They're 3x what we pay for electricity.
Right, I don't disagree. Don't you think Trump has done a great job?
Dude, you have the UK. They're not doing anything. Germany falls apart like a cheap suit. And you got the Italian lady going, dude, I want my fucking gold, because she knows, oh my God, dude, we're fucked.
I don't disagree. You think Trump is doing a great job. I don't disagree. Now look at the dollar.
Well, I didn't say he was doing a great job. I'm just saying he's a capitalist.
How has the DXY index has done since the beginning of the year? I can tell you it's down substantially. One of the worst performance for the dollar since the 1970s. So, we're fantasizing this whole idea, but we're not looking at the real facts that the dollar is actually devaluing versus other fiat currencies. And then the question remains, do you think that's the beginning of a big drop, or we're about to see a bounce?
The title of this is The Death of a Currency. The death of a currency of the US dollar isn't that it goes up and down. I don't really care what the dollar does. I'm only making investments in the US anyway.
Yeah,
I wouldn't make an investment in the UK if you gave me 50% discount. Right? So that tells you something already. All the innovations coming here. No one wants to live in those countries. It's scary to live there. You get your assets seized. Like, I don't see how this gets bad. I really don't see it, unless they go psycho and drop a nuke or do another 9/11 on steroids. Grant Cardone, do you think the world is coming to an end as far as the US dollar is concerned?
I don't think the world ever comes to an end, Gary.
Tavi, thank you very much. Tavi's got to go.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
Bye, Tavi.
Bye, Tavi.
Good to meet you, man.
Bye.
The U.S. dollar controls about 58% of all the dollars on the planet. Euro's around 20%. That's 3 times the money. The only place you spend a euro is over there. Okay, our GDP, to consider that we took on more debt, our GDP is what are we, 40% bigger GDP and growing with all the AI infrastructure, all the technology. It's just going to explode. Okay, we're 40% of all of Europe, one little country, 50 states, bunch of hicks over here with a lot of guns, and we produce 40% more GDP, about 30 trillion a year, than Europe's entire 20 trillion. So I don't know how we don't get stronger. Also, we have a president right now, and this isn't just, Trump's the greatest. Trump did in 4 hours what George Bush spent 8 years, 4,500 deaths, and $7 trillion in Iraq. We probably spent less than I don't know. He was there 2 hours, got in, got the guy out, boom, Venezuela's under control, or at least there's some semblance of more control. So at least nobody died. And to me, that's a president that 11 months after he started this, he's following up. Okay, he's already done enough. Venezuela wasn't on the map, but you know, all that was stolen from Chevron, and these are American companies. And so the fact that he's going in there and doing it in an expeditious way is what a business person does. Okay, execute on a plan, do it flawlessly. This has not been done in 30 or 40 years in this country. We have not.
I'm glad you weren't here early on, because I did a whole rant on, dude, we're taking over Greenland, Canada, South America. Don't like it, get the fuck out of the country. We're going to take these countries over because it's the right thing. The market needs that. It makes
Well, Gary, he promised that our borders would be secure.
Correct.
So I don't know if you guys understand, Caracas is only 1,300 miles away from Miami. Miami to New York, 1,300 miles. So he promised he would secure the borders. He did. Like that's what he said he would do, whether you're liberal or in the middle or on the right, or you're a MAGA lover or whatever. He is doing what he said he would do. And much of it's unpopular.
If I was in Canada, Venezuela, Mexico, Cuba, I would be all for this. I want to be a part of a bigger group. I don't want to be on my own in a world where big is the only thing that matters. That's the world we're moving to, guys. Macro, big volume, small margins.
And I think Gary, Donald Trump's going to want to see a stronger dollar, not a weaker dollar. I cannot imagine the orange man standing in front of people saying, I made the dollar weaker. That's just not going to come out of his face ever.
Well, he printed more dollars than any other president on the planet, dude. So
and he'll print again.
Yeah, exactly.
He'll print again. And by the way, better to print money and drive down interest rates than it is to destroy home equity in people's, the greatest source of wealth in America is home equity. You don't want to drive prices down. Anybody that owns a home does not want to lose their equity. And I hear a lot of people online right now, like, saying, hey, we need to drive home prices down. That's where most of America's equity is. It's about $38 trillion in equity sitting in home ownership. You don't want to drive that down. You want to make it more available to people, not less available.
Well, house prices are going to come down. Technology is going to bring pricing down. And right now, I don't even know why anybody's complaining. There's 1,000 homes for less than $325,000 within 5 miles of me. And I live near some of the greatest beaches in the world, like that you can literally use. You do not have to be a rich Malibu guy to access it. You can go there on your paddleboard, no problems. 350.
I mean, a bright person, Gary, a bright person would go get somebody that's got a home that they bought 4 or 5 years ago with a sub 3% interest rate and say, let me assume your loan and move in.
Exactly. But you don't even have to do that. There's thousands of houses here. Right, Dustin? There is no shortage of homes here.
I mean, Dustin's got to wear sunglasses. His future's so bright.
Dustin has muted himself. He censored himself. He's pro-China at the moment. But, going back to what we were talking about earlier with education and, technology, Dustin was just saying, he was just messaging me that he has his 2 daughters on the Stanford 200K 2-year AI course. Now they're making it free. It's originally like, $200K a year, I think. Is that right, Dustin? I know there's like Harvard classes and stuff that are free, but I didn't know about this one.
Daniela, I saw your
daughters on this.
When I used the analogy, wow, a guy like me could get an MBA, $250,000 MBA for nothing. I saw you looking and go, whoa, that's a good point. That is real quality, man. Okay, like, wow. That's not saying the MBA is wrong. It's like, wow, that's going to get super cheap. Woo.
I think it's incredible. I went to journalism school, right? Talk about an obsolete concept today. I went to journalism school and did a master's on top of it. Well, I really wanted to live in Italy, so I convinced my parents to pay for that master's. But anyhow.
There you go.
But what's amazing is, before you had to like to get some airtime or whatever, you had to like do these unpaid internships for months. And that's what I did. Like, you think Canadians didn't have hustle? Man, you had to see me. I took any gig just to get some airtime, radio time, print, whatever. But now there's the beauty of Instagram. If you can't get a job on air, you create your own channel. And I think that's incredible. There's so much power in that. I don't have to go suck up to the CBC. Please take me on as a reporter. No, F that. I create my own channel, my own content, and get into people's homes direct. And I think that's extremely powerful.
That's digital. See, that is technology. That is literally remove so many middlemen.
Absolutely.
And now the question is going to be, who's going to show up with authentic content that's valuable and sustainable, not controlled where you're a prostitute. It's going to be so rare.
Or Asian AI guy or whatever. These people keep asking about that.
Well, the best chance of that is going to be in the U.S. because the U.S. is the only place in the world that's holding up the First Amendment. And entrepreneurship is naturally disestablishment. Any entrepreneur is someone saying, I don't like the way you companies are doing it right now, so I'm going to build my own company. Like for me, it's Wall Street.
I've never heard that before.
Right?
Say that again, Joel. That's a very interesting way to characterize an entrepreneur. He's a rebel.
Entrepreneurship is naturally disestablishment because you're building a company because you're saying the rest of the companies out there aren't doing it right for consumers, and therefore you have to have the First Amendment. Because otherwise, some state-owned company in China is going to say, wait a second, you're going to take my business, or in Canada, or in Great Britain, and they'll blame it on hate speech, or they'll call it something else, when really you're just saying, yeah, but I think Wall Street sucks at their way of doing research, and so I'm going to build altimetry because I think I can do it better. If you try saying that in most countries in the world, the big six banks will make a call somewhere to some regulator, and you will be shut down, and your channel and your boat. There's no way I could build altimetry in any other country in the world but the United States. Really. I mean, I might in a small market, but a small market that has 5 million consumers. There's no way I could do it in a country like the United States of any size, except in the United States.
Very good point.
That is absolutely true.
Dustin, what do you think, buddy? Or are you off?
He's muted. Oh, you're back.
Well, the service sucks, so I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I've been dying to jump in on this. Europe is toast. Toast. Tyranny is a symptom of a failing system, right? So the reason they're cracking down is because their shit's falling apart. The euro's toast. Toast. As far as the dollar goes, Donald Trump is improving our outlook on a daily basis. And I think stable coins is going to be a big part of kicking that can down the road. I'm not saying it's moral, right? I'm not talking about but the power and dominance of the United States is going up, which means the dollar's survivability is going to continue. And to Gary's point, the Stanford course on AI, literally you can do it online for free, get a full $200,000 education in AI from the best Stanford professors. It's free online. You could just go learn it yourself. Or you can spend
amazing.
Like us. It's incredible. My kids are they're teenagers, and they're taking the Stanford course and learning how to actually use all of the different AIs, what actual large language models versus machine learning is. It's actually incredible. The field is being leveled so overwhelmingly. And that the other thing I'll say, AI is unlocking something that's going to be and I'd love to get Professor Littman's take on this, which is AI is allowing us to process large data sets. So there's going to be more Nick Shirleys. There's going to be more exposure of the waste and corruption of government as we utilize these tools to identify the people who've been stealing from us. I think that's on a escalating line that is better than any shitcoin chart I've ever traded.
Yeah, I agree. Totally.
Can I just add something about American entrepreneurship? And I think this is the greatest thing that America has to offer. I'm saying this as a born Canadian who lived in Italy. So I feel like I have more of a global view. But when people ask me, what do you love about living in the States? I say, you really have to be a moron not to be able to make it. Because if you're smart and you have drive, there's the opportunity, and you can't put a price tag on that. In Canada, that's not enough. In Europe, That's not enough. It's not
any
enough
part of the
to be
world.
smart, and it's not enough to have
Yes.
will. You have to know people, you have to know to work in the system, but not in the US.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, for some boring
Fact.
accounting, Gary, you might like that. And Grant, it's a pleasure meeting you, really. But some boring accounting work, because that's what I am, an accountant. The U.S. has a bigger stock market than the rest of the world combined because U.S. corporations generate more profit than the rest of the world combined. Where does it come from? 60+% of the current U.S. stock market, 60+%, are companies that didn't exist a few decades ago. Every other country in the world, look at the biggest 10 companies, Japan, same big 10 companies from 40 years ago. You want to look in Germany, same big 10 companies from 40 years ago, with almost no exception. Only the U.S. has this creative destruction where none of the biggest 10 companies, in fact, none of the biggest 20 companies in the U.S. 30, 40 years ago is one of the biggest today. They've all been replaced. And why is that? It's because 30 years ago, U.S. companies, U.S. investment in venture capital was more than the rest of the world combined. Today, it's 3 times the rest of the combined. Angel investing is almost non-existent in most countries in the world. And yet it was active 30 years ago, which led to these companies that end up becoming microcaps, that end up becoming the mega caps and become the Googles and the Facebooks and the Metas and whatever else that you have today. And Intuitive Surgical, little tiny company 20 years ago, no one ever heard of. Today it's a $100 billion company. So these innovations happen in the U.S. because the U.S. has the ecosystem, as Danny, you were saying, on individual level, but that happens on a giant macro level. And so people say, how can you forecast that the U.S. will still be dominant in 30 years? It was like, because you could have forecasted this 30 years ago, because the U.S. was the only place that was investing in entrepreneurship at a mass scale in innovation, encouraging people to come over. I mean, look at 2 of the biggest companies in the U.S. in AI, right? It's run by Jensen Huang and his cousin, Lisa Su. These are not American names, right? They're clearly Chinese, but where would you rather build a company if you're going to be a smart Chinese entrepreneur? Not in China. Look what happened to Jack Ma. Right? You want to be in the United States. So the U.S. still has that. And when you forecast that 30 years from now, you're like, the U.S. is still the best place to be for this, and increasingly so, not decreasingly so, which is why we can make this. How can you make a 30-year forecast on the U.S. still being economically dominant? Because you could have made this 30 years ago, given the data. And the data is stronger now for the next several decades than it was 30 years ago.
That's a good point. I like that. Go ahead, Justin.
No, I just, it's so refreshing to hear people who are positive about the outlook of the future of the US. Like, I feel like so much of what we consume online is simply designed to make us dissatisfied with the conditions that we're in when we live in the greatest and most opportune times ever to exist as humans on the earth. It's great. It's been really refreshing to hear everybody's look. Like, even though we all, every single one of us could pick apart like all kinds of things we want to fix, that's part of the creative destruction, which is we are constantly cycling through and improving. And I'm so bullish on the outlook for the United States more broadly. As long as we don't elect Democrats, like, we should be fine.
I'm going to say bye to you guys. I have to go feed my children.
Danielle,
But I love you all.
Thank
And
you for
happy New
coming.
Year. Bye.
Always
See you
love your
soon.
input. Thank you. Well, Dana, why don't we go around the hoop and have everybody maybe give closing comments. I didn't realize how long we've been going on. Grant, maybe we start with you since you've had the least amount of stage time.
Man,
Yeah,
I
that's me,
just
Grant.
tuned in to get the froth. I wanted to get the froth. I wanted to get the cream off the top here, and I got it. I'm walking away with America's the greatest that's ever done the game. They the Kanye West of the economy. So go America. That's what I got.
When do you
Kanye
think
might have been
that-
the wrong example, but
When do you
get
think
the
the
point.
dollar is gonna go away, Grant?
Better
Does
than
it not
Diddy.
have any value? What'd you say, Gary?
No, better than Diddy, he said.
Yeah.
Hey, look,
But not much better.
Fair enough.
I was invited to a Diddy party.
We don't need to hear about that, dude.
I didn't go.
Flip that.
I didn't
We-
show up.
We don't need to hear you bragging.
No, but the American dollar isn't going anyplace. America's not going anyplace. I mean, Trump, if you're an American right now, you got to be proud of what happened this weekend. You don't have all the details. I don't have all the details. Nobody knows what's going on down there. But I know if China's 1,500 miles from us setting up a place to operate. Dude, that ain't cool. You know, this is what I voted for. America first. Shut the borders down. Europe needs to shut their borders down. They got wide open borders and their economy is getting smaller, not bigger. Yeah. Shut your fucking borders down. Control your property. You know, I'm waiting. I think Trump's going to come out this year. I think he's going to try to build 3 to 5 million homes. He's going to try to do something crazy in housing because that's what brings houses down. When you remove the regulation, house prices come down, period. It's not about the cost of lumber. It's the cost of regulations represents about 40% of a home today because it takes so long to build one, to get permits. So I think he comes out.
Regulation is a tax.
I think he's going to, Gary, I think we're going to have the biggest tax refunds we've ever had. And he's going to keep doing what he can to lower taxes. I think he's going to push DeSantis's bill on all states to remove property taxes nationwide. It's going to split the blue. This blue is going to protest anything Trump does. And it's actually going to it'll checkmate the blue states, the Democrats, to say, no, we still want property taxes. If Trump wants it, we don't want it. And it's going to trump the blue states.
It'll be a Monzani moment.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think we could continue to see more separation between the two parties and common sense lining up with property rights and insanity, if you want to go there, lining up with no property rights and let the two parties fall where they fall.
Lutnick early this year, when they said they're going to reduce federal taxes on Americans and just get rid of the tax, he actually said it was for 150 grand of AGI and below. So if you take 150 grand earners and say, I'm going to charge up to 150 grand, zero tax, it'll cost the US $350 billion. Do you know what the incremental increase in tax revenue is from tariffs on other countries? $350 billion. So he literally could cut taxes on everything up to 150 grand and have zero increase in the deficit simply by keeping the tariffs that he's put in place now for the next year. No increase in the deficit, and yet still put in a $350 billion tax cut. That $350 billion tax cut, plus the tips, plus the Social Security, which is another $100 billion. So putting $450 billion into consumers' pockets over the next 12 months is going to spike the economy in fantastic ways, and it won't be a spike like we saw with the handouts of 2022. It'll be a spike because people get to keep the money they earn and get to spend it or invest it on what they want. And that could result in, frankly, a boom to U.S. equities, but also a boom in crypto because people have a lot more money to invest. And it'll be paid for by whom? Not by this idea that tariff is a tax is wrong. It's a tax not on the consumer. And in fact, it's been proven, if done surgically the way it's been done, not the way it was done with Smoot Hawley in the 1930s, when it's done individually on country by country in the pace way it's been, you actually find that the exporter will absorb as much as 50% of that tariff, and then the distributor will absorb it. So basically, the company in China selling it to Walmart will eat 50% of the tariff to not lose market share. And then Walmart will say, I don't want the prices going up. I'll eat a little bit too, so they can keep prices down. The U.S. consumer doesn't end up paying the full tariff in a tax. They pay a percentage, right? And it varies from apparel to electronic goods or whatever else. But at the end of the day, a tariff is a tax, but it's not a tax on the consumer the way the mainstream media has been screaming that it would be. It's not great for the exporters to the U.S., but man, they've been making too much money off American consumers for a while anyway. They should be due to pay. Gary, sorry for all the accounting.
No, it's cool. Lynette, what are your views on this?
Well, I can see points on all sides, but I also know that we get to a point in affordability, which is where we are right now. And so we've had this great devaluation, not just in the US, but all over, of devaluing the currency. And so if some of these tax breaks can alleviate a lot of that lack of affordability for the public, then that could indeed prolong the confidence level. But I go back to, it's really simple. If it's full faith and credit that supports a currency, then, and we've already eliminated a whole bunch of those levels of confidence, he better keep those prices down. He better reverse them. I don't know whether or not he can. We'll find out, but that's what it's hinging on. For me, it's that confidence piece. It's what I pay the most attention to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, you do keep bringing that up, confidence. No.
It's all of it's every con game requires new money and confidence. So if you can accomplish
So 5 years from now, we're 2030. Let's go 2030. What outperforms gold, silver, Bitcoin?
Oh, I think it will probably be gold and then silver and then maybe Bitcoin. I mean, we're going to go through a test. I can't tell you what the answer to that test is because I don't think it was a coincidence that Bitcoin it came out in January of 2009 and quantitative easing came out in March. So it does certainly look like the markets have adopted it, but I think we've got a huge test to go through. And I don't know who's going to pass that test. I know who has passed that test. Gold and silver have passed that test many, many times, thousands and thousands of years. And I'm not saying the cryptocurrencies are going away or Bitcoin is going away. I just really find it's interesting that they want you to think that it's this. And this is a representation of Ethereum and a representation of XRP. Why not have them pink and purple? No,
yeah, but I didn't ask about XRP. It's a very different protocol. I said Bitcoin. I would be willing to take a small or large wager on that. But we'll see. I don't want to embarrass anybody. We will see. I think, as the old man at the table, we are not going back to 8-track tapes.
Nope.
I have this device right here. This company came out with the iPod. Now, I'm going to just share a little weird story here, okay? They came out, they disrupted music in a way that didn't send anybody to prison, unlike the Napster guy, right? They then do to the telephone. They could store, but now I'm using Spotify on the very telephone that already had a music embedded, but it was ugly. It didn't really function well. And Spotify stuck in. Now, most everyone's using something other than Apple Music. IBM hasn't been referred to in 30 years, okay? Except when I say it. IBM's a dead company, and they were eaten up by innovators. And like to Joel's point, and to bet against innovation would be like me going back and going, okay, I don't think the Amazon's not going to make it. This is bigger than Amazon, okay? This is the entire, like, you just see gold and silver. I think gold and silver are telling me everything I need to know about Bitcoin. I think this is absolutely essential that gold and silver do this because you're much, much bigger than Bitcoin. The Bitcoin people are obnoxious when they start comparing Bitcoin against gold that's been around 1,000 years. But the gold we have today and how we get our prices is very different than we got 1,000 years. It has also been fiated, right? It has been fiated, except for the physical, which is difficult. And there is cases where gold can be seized. Every king has seized gold all over the planet forever. So to say it can't be seized, oh yes, it can be, unless you have a bigger weapon than the other guy.
I did not say that. And
Bitcoin can be seized too, by the way. I think it's bullshit that you can't. Look, if a government comes in with a SWAT team, you're giving your shit over. Period. It's not, but it's digitally, it's just going to work more efficiently.
Well, look, I'm not saying that that's not going to be a permanent fixture. It is. I knew it back in 2010. I've been talking about it since then. You can go back and.
Did you stack it or did you just watch it? I just got to know.
Did I what?
Or are you a cheerleader or do you own Bitcoin?
No, I'm not a cheerleader. And the reason why I've not bought into Bitcoin is because of the position that I hold. I know that was a Trojan horse. I saw it. That's what I've been saying for a lot of these years.
A Trojan horse for who?
support the lie of it, because while there are definitely good things that come out of all of this technology, no doubt about it, and I'm not saying that, I can also see some really negative things about it, and I just want it to be fairly balanced. And I don't see why you can't do a combination of the old and the innovation so that you can create the best of both worlds and really create a level playing field for all of the entrepreneurs, wherever they might be. We are in transition. I don't think transitions ever happen super smoothly. That's what I'm paying close attention to.
That's why it's called disruption.
Exactly.
That's why I can say something so brazen as I think BMW fails as a corporation because IBM has. They're just the walking dead now. And people find it, I see the way people look at me. Dude, you just said Audi and BMW were going to, Mercedes-Benz. Yes, absolutely they're going down. They're not efficient. They are not efficient. If they have to work on a global scale, China will destroy them. Destroy them. They'll destroy Tesla, except for their AI stuff. So I just think that this is a disruptor's wet dream, man. It's like, oh my God, this couldn't be any better.
Look, it's really simple. When one currency dies, another one is born. What gold and silver do is they give you that protection and that safety, and they hold your purchasing power intact to get from one system into the next system. And then frankly, take advantage of the opportunities that present all along the way. So I'm not saying it has to be one or the other. Everybody always goes, well,
Lynette's mature enough to be jaded enough to go, hey, it's all a fucking bullshit scheme. Okay. Until you take the cooks out of the kitchen, all the evil cooks, it's going to be a messy recipe.
Exactly. And so that's really the power and the value of sound money needs to be above governments and central banks. That is my point. And we have the opportunity to do it because we're in huge change. I mean, this is certainly the largest change that I've seen in my lifetime, and I'm going to be 72 in October. You know, I've never seen an opportunity like this. And crazy as it may sound, I want redeemable gold back in the system. It can be a crypto system. It's just a percentage of redeemable. And I know that sounds crazy, but it works. It's the only way to level the playing field. Otherwise, we don't have, I'm sorry, because I consider myself a huge capitalist. We don't have a capitalist system. We don't have a democracy, right? So I would love to see things more democratic, and I would love to see a level playing field, but winners and losers are chosen. In sound money, they're not chosen. If you're supposed to fail, then you fail, right? Capitalism, what is this bailing out garbage? So I would like to see a much cleaner system and a fair playing field, whatever that may be.
Yeah, thanks
I
for being here.
propose-
Dana, real quick, Dustin,
Yeah.
I think Dustin spoke to this where the innovation gives us a hope that all the monopoly construct, look, there is no industry that's really free. That's why I'm like, I'm done, dude. I'm just going to buy Bitcoin, mind my own business, because I have zero human error. No FTC, no DOJ can fuck with me anymore. I don't get letters. I do whatever you want. I have zero human error risk here now. Doesn't matter if the gold is in a mine or not in the mine. I got it. I know where it is. Technology, Dustin, bring us out here, because I thought that was a really interesting point was, hey, if we get enough disruptors like the Garys, Lynette's, the Joels of the world, and we have First Amendments. I love how you pull First Amendments into business because it's relevant. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm not doing business in Nicaragua, right? I'm like, shit, dude, they're going to keep my money. Brazil, they're going to keep my money.
Or Great Britain.
Yes, Great Britain's a horrible place to do business. So I think that was a good point, Dustin. I'm kicking it off to you.
Yeah. So, all of this is a constant fight that has to be waged. right? Which is if you do not fight for these freedoms, they will continue to be infringed, and we've lost way too many of them, and way too many people don't have the attitude to continue to protect them, which is where the danger comes from. And you have to be careful with these damn accountants and their manipulation the same way that you have to be careful about the politicians, right? Which is, even with gold and silver, the paper markets are used to manipulate the markets at the behest of the people who have power. The thing I love about Bitcoin and smart contracts is that instead of human vote or representation, it's based on hard rules that are embedded and unbreakable. And so the more that we can move to that, what I'll say
inauditable.
The thing is, we're never going to get it to perfect, but this I agree. I think transition is the most beautiful word, and there's undoubtedly the thing we're going to transition to is not going to be perfect, but it will be superior, right? It may be bumpy in between, but when we move to whatever it is, if we retain the baseline, and that baseline you can find in your Constitution, your Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights, as long as we are free and we can pursue what we need to pursue. I wish we still had I wish it was life, liberty, and property, and we hadn't changed it to pursuit of happiness, because but I think Trump really wants to leave with giving our property rights back to us and decimating the tax. If he wants to be the most important president of all time, that's the agenda we'll see. And I hope he's laying the groundwork for it. And I'm unlike everybody else, I don't know how it's going to turn out in Venezuela. I've made some jokes. I'm dressed like Maduro, right? Like I got the tracksuit. I'm living the dream. I really hope it doesn't turn into another quagmire. And I don't think it's a guarantee that it won't or that it will. And so I think we have to sit back and see how it plays out. But in terms of the dollar, this is the first time that I've seen how we could actually drop prices, which is if gas goes back to $1 a gallon or under $1 a gallon or around $1 a gallon, all of the costs.
$2.20 is very reasonable for gasoline. Okay, they're paying $11 in Germany. Okay, like gasoline is not our problem. It's bullshit to say gasoline. Electricity is not our problem. Nobody turns their computers off. If the price of electricity was priced correctly, people would turn everything off. And there isn't a person here that's not consuming massive amounts of electricity, doing nothing, just sitting there because you're lazy.
What I'm saying, Gary, is if the price of gas comes down as a result of what happened in Venezuela, the price of groceries comes down, the affordability of everything comes down, and like Trump's manifest destiny of extending and projecting American power probably puts us in the greatest freaking country ever to exist. Let's go, MAGA, baby.
Love the way you ended that, dude. That's awesome. Dana.
Wow, thanks, Dustin.
Yes,
Well,
sister.
I just want to propose that, maybe for Cardone debates, we have a way for you to take that wager. I think we should legally figure that out. That's what I think. What's going up first? Gold, silver, Bitcoin.
Stocks.
Yeah, we should be able to do that. Anyway,
Well,
Gary,
did you
I guess
enjoy?
didn't
Did
like
you
that
enjoy
idea.
this debate, Dana?
Yeah, I did.
it was
And
awesome.
I think what makes the debate excellent is the people.
I agree. Hey guys,
Thank you so much
very
for coming.
Yeah,
Everyone
really
follow
appreciate it.
these guys.
Dana, Gary, thank you. Dustin, Lynette.
Have a good night. Please come back.